Hello, everyone, and welcome to another session of our Ed Talk series. I'd like to give a very, very warm welcome to the community at Blue Ivy Coaching, with their founder and CEO, Marcus DeWitt, who is with us today at Ed Talks. Hello, Marcus.
Hi, Andrea. Hi, Gabriela. Thanks so much for having me.
We're super happy to have you with us today. I am Andrea Ferrari, and this is my colleague and partner, Gabriela Gonzalez. I'm the CEO at Whole Schools International, and Gabby is the director of programs. And together we have created this innovative space to inspire conversation around education during these changing times. And well, yes, at Whole Schools, we believe education is transforming, and the pillars of innovation, equity, above all, well-being and happiness are those that are going to sustain a transformation that is future-proof and that can face the challenges of the short, medium, and long-term consequences. And this is why we gather in this space with educational experts who can guide our institutions, our schools, and with your international perspectives, lead us to co-create a new landscape in education. And we're super interested in the work that you have been doing in Mexico, Marcus, for the past 5 or 6 years even. As the founder of Blue Ivy Coaching, we know that you are from Mexico, born in Mexico, but you grew up between the US and Spain before you attended Yale University. And of course, we know now that Blue Ivy Coaching is Latin America's leading career orientation and university admissions guidance program. And I think we met Marcus once upon a time, a long time ago, when the program was just beginning, and it's come a long way. So we would love to have some insights. First of all, welcome you again on our program, Marcus, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here.
Excellent. So with that in mind, Gabby will head right into our conversation on guiding students into the future, and what career guidance do students really need in high school at this time, at these challenging and changing times, Marcus?
Yeah, fantastic. And thank you both again for having me, and super excited to have this conversation. So starting with the career guidance piece, which is typically also where students begin their journey with our programs. Career guidance in an ever more complex and competitive university and career landscape becomes ever so more important. Some just kind of key statistics. According to the World Economic Forum, in 2050, 65% of the jobs that will exist don't exist yet. That number is even higher. According to IBM, they place the number at 85%. So that means that our students that are in secondary school, by 2050, they'll be at the peak of their professional careers, between 45, 50, 55 years old. So that means that the future that we are preparing our students for will be radically different than the world that we operate and work and live in today. I'm talking about over 2/3 of the jobs being different. And there's a lot of tendencies. It's not only AI, although obviously artificial intelligence is a primary driver of that, but really across the board, we're entering into a fourth industrial revolution. And with every industrial revolution, going back from agricultural or the industrial revolution, jobs are eliminated just as jobs are created. And that creates tremendous opportunity for those that analyze, prepare, even strategize as these changes begin to implement themselves. And so our career guidance program, in short, is to prepare students for the degrees of the future. And what we identify is that many traditional orientation programs are preparing students for not even the degrees of the present, but even the degrees of the past. And there are many degrees, many even jobs or professions, although we like to focus a little bit more on university degrees, which is our expertise, which you could even say are on the point of extinction, and jobs that are being automated, professions that are no longer as relevant in the future as they have been in the last 50 years. And so we like to begin our piece, we like to begin our program, we like to begin our communication with students and parents from this starting point, which is the future that we're helping our students to navigate, presents very different kinds of challenges and opportunities that we need to research, analyze, understand, and ultimately communicate and educate on.
Well, that's a very well-rounded answer. Thank you for framing it in light of the vision towards the future and how we're trying to shape the students and better prepare them, or the phrase of being future ready. I'd like to think, and Gabriel and I, we spend a lot of time working towards building up or strengthening the well-being in our educational communities. And I know this is one of the topics in our discussion today is, how does well-being contribute? How does well-being contribute to, of course, strengthening and making sure that when those kids graduate from school, they're going to be ready for college success? So mainly, what are those skills that you're seeing, Marcus? If we don't know what jobs or careers preparing our students for, can we prepare them with different sets of skills that altogether creates a rounded well-being package, right? That will better prepare them for college success. When you look at the profile of a student, what is it that you're looking for that will make them ready to face this unknown, some of the unknown factors in the future?
Yeah, that's fantastic. I just in the same way that we can do an analysis of the jobs of the future, we can also do an analysis, and there's also research on the skills for the future. And coming to the question of well-being, so Google, as well as IBM, McKinsey, a lot of these global either organizations or think tanks publish their studies on what they believe to be the 10 skills of the future. And of the top 10 most important, most relevant skills of the future, 4 of the 10 have to do with skills that relate to soft skills, that have to do with leadership, that have to do with emotional intelligence, that have to do with communication, that have to do with culture building. The other 5 or 6 have to do with analytical, quantitative, and technological skills. And so first, just to begin thinking about soft skills as a way of analyzing well-being, that is that a person who is holistically minded or holistically centered is one that typically has soft skills and thus will also succeed in not only university study but also in professional development. And so we can just start to analyze it based on that, and really kind of the driving concept, I'd say the operative mechanism of our career guidance philosophy is the philosophy of ikigai, this Japanese concept of your reason for being. And this concept of ikigai, I really appreciate it, and I really also respect how this concept goes beyond the cliche of follow your passion. The concept of following your passion is one that we hear all the time and know all the time, but I think it falls short, and it falls short in two ways. One is has to do with talent, and the other aptitude, and the other has to do with what the world needs. And let's start with talent. I mean, aptitude. I think a lot of times people become even frustrated when they follow passion if they don't have talent or aptitude in that particular passion, and then if they don't know how to channel that particular passion or interest and talent into what the world needs. And I think in these, the way that we do our advising is these three vertices. Yes, your passions. Yes, what interests you, but also your talents, your aptitudes, and this third vertex is what the world needs. And I think what the world needs is an interesting way of even understanding the job market. It's a poetic way of saying, I mean, ultimately, where are there job opportunities? What is being prioritized in our society, in our economy? And when you align those three vertices between what you're good at, what you like to do, and what other people want you to do, then there's fulfillment, then there's alignment, then there's purpose. That's the concept of ikigai. And so in terms of well-being, in terms of wholeness, I think those are the three. And I know that can encompass a lot more, but in terms of choosing a degree, these are really the three most important drivers of well-being and choosing a degree, and how schools need to be preparing their students to choose a degree and become future ready as well as university ready.
Marcos, I love what you're saying, because it absolutely coincides with what we know that students need to do. However, I think a great part of what you said implies self-knowledge, right? And the part of self-knowledge helps you discover that talent, that thing that you're good at, that you're going to enjoy, that you can envision yourself doing. What would you say is the biggest obstacle, for students to achieve this? Because what we do know is that usually high school graduates are a little lost in that sense. No, they come out and they really cannot visualize that future for themselves. So what would you say are the most common obstacles to achieve that?
Yeah, absolutely. Short provocative answer would be the parents.
I love provocative, of course.
I think that's that obviously your familial education, the culture and the education that you have around the breakfast or the dinner table is fundamental. Where we come into it, I think, is hugely important, which is mentorship, which is coaching. I discussed with Andrea that I read an article a couple of weeks ago that basically studied that between the ages of 16 and 18, every conversation that you have about your vocation or about your professional career ultimately results in 0.7% greater income in the next 10 years. So every time you're just talking about this, every time students have the opportunity to sit with an expert and explore and develop that self-awareness, that knowledge, and that expertise about these issues, those conversations in and of themselves are contributing immensely to a student's self-development and to this decision. And I think ultimately this is the value of the work that we do, which is we meet with students and families on a daily basis, and a student will say to me, I'm not sure if I want to study economics, business, finance, industrial engineering, but I'm more or less looking at those areas. And in my experience, for many traditional vocational counselors or even school guidance counselors, that's really as far as they can take them. You're more or less, you do the classic vocational test, and based on your score on an aptitude test, more or less you're focused on business, finance, industrial engineering, and that's the result of our process. And where Blue Ivy's process adds a lot of value is that my coaches are real world professionals. So I have a coach who has a master's in industrial engineering from UT Austin. I have a coach who has an MBA from Georgetown and has worked in banks and consulting. And so these coaches are able to sit down with these students and really guide them and help them understand, no, based on your profile, since you're focused more on an executive persuasion leadership, this is the right kind of degree for you. Oh, you want to enter into the investment banking world? No, that's not the right degree for you. These are the right category of degrees for you. And so leveraging that real world expertise is really the foundation of the mentorship that we provide students in these processes. And that's why I think schools ultimately are failing in vocational guidance and in career counseling, because they're doing this advising from an approach of socio-emotional development, which is important. But coming back to our 3 vertices of Ikigai, that's only 1/3 of the job. And so in that sense, we also need to define part 2 and part 3, which is really where Blue Ivy comes in.
Okay.
That's incredible. And what a well-rounded approach in terms of the methodology. What could you say enhances in terms of technology, and how have you been able to accelerate this whole process through new technologies and different approaches that were not available 5 years ago when you began?
Yeah, thanks so much, Andre. It's almost as if you knew what we were up to. No, we're really excited that over the last few months we've been developing a couple of modules of our program using VR technology. And so right now we have a library of over 90 job immersion experiences that students can access via a VR headset, which is really exciting. I mean, it's when you put on the Oculus, you put on the VR headset, and you have this immersive experience in a day in the life of an architect, a day in the life of an engineer, what it is actually like to be on the trading floor of the New York Stock Exchange. It shows you, really also how your personality, beyond just your aptitudes and interests, how your personality can also align with university paths and also professional development. And so ultimately, VR has been a technology that we've used. I mean, honestly, I think there's multiple technologies that we've leveraged. I think there's in today's information age, all the information is out there. All the information is, with Google, accessing content, accessing information no longer becomes the asymmetry. Rather, today's challenge is, how do you be selective with information? How do you interpret information based on your profile? Anyone can read these studies that we're reading, but our skill set in particular is how do you know how to communicate the appropriate information to each student in a highly personalized way?
Highly personalized way is what matters. No, I believe in this whole process that it becomes all about the student being the protagonist and making that good match, that good fit. And it begins with the experts, with the expertise, and now add to that the ingredient of technology, which is going to really make a huge difference in how they can engage and be motivated. Tell us a little bit more. I love that Gabriela introduced the idea of the obstacle, and you talked about parents, and then you talked about what kind of role, if we think about the parents and how they can better support the journey, what would you give as advice to them in this whole process? How could we kind of switch around the role that they've traditionally played?
Yeah,
Andrea, and if I can add to Andrea's question, how do you put in the culture aspect of it? Because of course there's the parent intervention, but also the culture. And I just read an article the other day about millennials and looking for the soft life, they called it, no? And the soft life is this different outlook on where work is not this dimension that we all have. And that's something that is just bringing another element to the table, no? So how can students navigate both?
Yeah, really, really interesting. So coming back to the first point about parents, I think what's most important to help students develop self-awareness is for parents to also develop that self-awareness, in the sense that parents to know what are their known unknowns, right? And so kind of in that sense, like as a parent, you also need to know what you don't know. And the where we see difficult, complicated situations is where there's clearly a lack of knowledge or a lack of experience, but rather authority is asserted over knowledge. When authority / the power of the parental figure takes more place than actual knowledge and mentorship, that's where students find themselves in really tricky situations, even on a psychological level. So I think ultimately the best parenting that I've seen on the career piece of this is where parents are ultimately responsible for creating the structures and guiding the environments in which a student can lead the process, lead their own career guidance process, their own university process, their own academic process. But parents ultimately provide the resources that the students can or cannot take advantage of. In other words, I think on a daily basis, as I'm engaging with hundreds, if not thousands, of students and parents through our organization, we see who is the captain of the team. And I think it's important for the parents to let the students be the captain of the team, but to continue to be on that team. And so I think that's kind of my first habit. I think the second thing, Gabriela, really interesting is, I think as millennials, parents, and have kids, questions about work-life balance, questions about equity, questions about social justice need to be more a part of this process. Where, I mean, let me just mention two examples of how we tackle it. This idea that you're going to join a company fresh out of college and be in that company for the next 30 years of your life, that's not happening anymore. On average, millennials are having 4 career experiences. They're working in 4 companies before they turn 30. And so part of our career advisement is understanding what is in today a lot of transition, rotation, and navigation through companies that is no longer punished where it maybe was in a previous generation. So I think that's kind of the first factor, which is the way career development is happening is very different today than it was 20 years ago, in that sense of flexibility. On the other hand, what's also interesting, and maybe in Latin America we don't perceive this, but there's a huge shift in the United States against the liberal arts. Computer science as a major in and of itself is about to overtake in volume all of the humanities degrees combined. I just saw this study yesterday. So in 2 years, there will be more computer science majors, not even STEM, not even engineering, just computer science. There'll be more computer science than all the humanities combined.
Wow.
And this really responds to more and more people wanting a pre-professional education. This morning, I saw a study that 75% of all undergraduate students in Mexico study a business or business-related degree. And so also in that sense, there are changing interests. We see every year more students wanting to study sustainability, wanting to study entrepreneur related. There's another statistic about how also in 10 years, 60 to 70% of American professionals will be at least fully freelance, self-employed, or partly self-employed. So there's more of an entrepreneurial culture. There's more of a culture focused on sustainability, focused on values. I mean, this is just ultimately interesting sociological topics to analyze that come into play in this work that we do.
That's great, Marcos. I love the sociological twist and how it really is at the core of what you're doing, because what we really admire in your work is that ultimately what we're supporting our students to yes, find their passion, yes, their ikigai, and this alignment, which will ultimately make them participate as better citizens and in the service of others. You keep talking about giving back to the sustainability of the planet and how to contribute, and I think that's what really grounds our purpose in life, right? So when we find the great match between what we're interested, passionate about, what we're talented in, and then how that fits into the greater or the larger picture in the world, right? So Gabriela and I are really passionate about transforming education one school at a time, and we look at that very seriously from the perspective of the happiness of the student and how that contributes to them being better achievers, and their success at school being determined not by the grades that they make, but because of their holistic approach and how all the dimensions of being human and humankind, let's be both human and kind, take center stage, no? And they are the true protagonists that are going to take this and run with it. And you've definitely found a way to align, you know, the beginning of their school career to what comes next. I only wish our kids had that guidance, and I'm ever so glad that we can make a difference and create awareness towards the work that you're doing. I think it's essential, and what a great thing to have available. Tell us, Marcos, where and how can schools get started? Because we need some advice here. If we have a large audience that are listening to us today, and of course they'll be interested in everything you've said, how can we start to make these smaller, take the initial steps towards starting to develop this culture of alignment with our ikigai and this mentoring with Blue Ivy? What are the first steps or advice that you have?
Fantastic. I would say the first step has always got to be kind of an analysis that leads us to self-awareness, which is our approach to schools is we're not an education agency where we come into a school and say, hey, I represent summer camps in Canada and I want to sell you my summer camp in Canada. No, our approach is much more even kind of in a consultant style, which is, how can we help you? We have a team of coaches, a team of consultants, a methodology, team of programs, and our approach to schools, just like it is with students, is also hyper-personalized. So for example, of the British or the American schools, this culture of career guidance, we don't really have a tradition of vocational guidance in the United States or in United Kingdom. What we have in Latin America of orientación vocacional, that doesn't really exist in the United States and the UK. And I see how, as a result of that, American and British schools, international schools, don't have that culture either. They'll have someone who works on the social-emotional side. They'll often help someone who helps on the college application side, but there's no often a real program to do career guidance. And so sometimes we'll come in and we'll do either just a workshop, a presentation, or do a semester-long program, or with some schools, they just fully outsource that to us. And so we're very, again, personalized. I think kind of the second part of this is the university advising, which is everything that we've been talking about in this conversation is not just about choosing a degree in career guidance, it's also about choosing a university. I would even say that there's more confusion about this vast ecosystem of universities, particular competitive universities. Families and students are really lost and confused about this whole world of opportunities and scholarships that exist for them. There's this myth that to study abroad, you have to be very wealthy, and that if you have, a middle class or upper middle class budget, you're not going to have that opportunity, when in fact, it is cheaper to study in Europe than it is in Latin America. It is cheaper to study in Florida than it is at the Tec de Monterrey. all of the border states. I know our audience isn't only from Mexico, but Florida, Texas, Arizona, California have scholarship waivers for all students from Latin America. And so in that sense, there really is a ton of information, a ton of opportunity. And I was just speaking to a head of the school the other day where he said, in all honesty, for us, the college advisement piece, it's like a hot potato. We send the hot potato to the school psychologist, so maybe she can help, and she doesn't really know how to do it, so she passes it along to the English coordinator, and they try to help figure out the Common App, but then they pass it back to the head of school. And college advising is this hot potato that no one is often fully formally trained for. And likewise, kind of our value proposition is give us that hot potato. This is what we do. This is what we do 24/7. We're in all the conference, all the webinars. We have all the university connections, all the expertise to know how to guide each one of your students towards the best university for their choice of degree, for their family budget, and for their school culture, and ultimately family and professional plan. And so, ultimately we have relationships with 200 plus schools across Latin America, and I'd say the world. We work in a kind of an institutional way where our client is not the family, we're rather the school, and at least a dozen schools. And this is really kind of the piece that's really starting to pick up right now, where schools are hearing the fact that we've worked with dozens of students who go to their schools and are turning around, and schools are starting to ask themselves, if we have this in-house, why is everyone going to an outside organization? And when we present really kind of our methodology, our framework, our infrastructure, then we see that ultimately we can not replace, but ultimately complement what a school is already doing. So ultimately, it's very personalized in a very much a consultant way. We come up with a very individualized program for each school.
We love it, and we love it so much. And we know that you have an event coming up, because if I'm a student in the audience now and I'm listening, I really want to ask Marcus, hey, Marcus, how do I get started? What do I do? You've talked a lot about the school component, but what about our students? I know there's an event coming up, and there are different ways that we can approach and come closer to everything that you're developing. Tell us a little bit about that just before we run out of time. Leave us with a little preview of the event coming up at the end of September.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we actually have two events. So one is for students, and we have our college fair, 30 plus universities. It's going to be virtual. So no matter where you're based, you can attend our college fair. Those who are schools, invite your students, come to our college fair. We have schools from the United States, UK, Europe, Canada, opportunity to come and speak directly with admissions representatives, ask questions about scholarships, programs. So that's just a fantastic opportunity to engage not only with us, Blue Ivy, but also with universities. And then second, we have a breakfast on Wednesday, September 28th, in 2 weeks, for school directors, heads of schools, heads of secondaries, school leaders, to learn about how Blue Ivy is using virtual technology to do career guidance. And so that's a private event, so please RSVP, let us know you're coming. The college fair is a public event. The more the merrier.
Wow, that's really great. Thank you for being so generous and inviting all of our audience. I'm sure they will be eager to learn more and to participate, as will we. Will be following closely. We really want to thank Blue Ivy for inspiring us this afternoon and giving so much to our older students that are, taking this big step in the next phase of their lives. Thank you for bringing all this to our attention, Marcus. And we'll be following closely, right, Gabby?
Yes, of course. It sounds amazing. I have a high schooler who will probably be knocking your door in the future, right. Marcus. Right. I think it sounds amazing, because it's true. It's one of the biggest decisions, and we need all the help we can get, right?
Everybody needs a coach. I just
Absolutely.
watched King Richard the other day. There comes a moment where King Richard himself says, you know what? I can't keep training Serena and Venus. I got to take them down to Florida. They need a coach. And I think parents play such an instrumental role, but they also need to know up until which point they need someone else to come in and help. And that's for everything. And so that's where we're super happy to jump in, do that kind of last mile support in those final couple years of high school. So we're super happy to be a resource to schools and to be a resource to families in this, really life-defining moment of choosing what to study and where to go to university.
Life-defining moment. You've said it. And
I love that.
Thanks for remembering the parents, because they need to be supportive and supported in the process, no? And I think that goes back to one of your questions earlier. So thank you for a well-rounded conversation that includes the entire educational community. That's what we're here for, to create that awareness piece. And Blue Ivy, Marcus Stewart, you've really done a great job. Thank you very much, and have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Take care.